Hey everybody, welcome to Linuxcast. I'm your host, Matt.
I'm Drew.
I'm Nate.
I'm Pavel.
All right, so
Thank you for having me, guys.
Yeah, so in case you guys haven't noticed, we have a guest. This is Pavel, also known as Reluctant Anarchist here on YouTube. So, hello, Pavel. Welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
So before we jump into our mini topic and our main topic, normally we push this off to the end of the show, but we're switching things up. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and your channel and where we can find you?
All right. My name is Pavel Urlapov. I'm the host of YouTube channel Reluctant Anarchist that is all about Linux, and I also write about tech for the Russian-speaking media, wilsa.com. I think that's about it.
Cool. So we have a bona fide journalist here, and now I feel suddenly less. Okay, so welcome, Pavel. We're going to jump into our mini topic, which is basically just a icebreaker, if you will. Now, I did a little bit of a boo-boo this week. I chose a mini topic that really could be an entire episode.
I thought exactly the same thing.
Yeah, and they're all cool.
So, but just think of this as a test balloon. If it goes well, we'll do an episode of it again later on. So,
all right.
The mini topic for this week is, do you guys think that this time is going to be different when it comes to Windows end of life? Will this lead to, and I'm putting this in air quotes, the year of the Linux desktop? So we'll go with Pavel first. Do you think that Windows 10 ending of life will lead to a much broader Linux adoption than normal?
Yes and no. I believe that the fact that many people who is now holding to Windows 10 won't be switching to Windows 11 because Windows 11 does a lot of things wrong. But not every single one of them wants to switch to Linux because, well, first of all, Linux is a bit scary for them, and the second, they have a lot of if a PC gamer holding to Windows 10 for quite specific reasons, they may have a specific software or specific video games to play, and they want to play and they won't continue them to play. Linux, while Linux is great, I'm using Linux on my production machine every day. Linux is not can't compete with Windows in terms of software compatibility and in terms of hardware compatibility too. So I'm not think that we're not going to see the explosion of the Linux market share, but I think it's going to continue to rise in a very slow rate.
So basically like it has.
Yeah.
Nate, what about you? Do you think that this time is different, or are we still just in the same timeline?
No, we're in the same timeline. It's just going to get slowly better over time. And the reason why is because as much as people complain, they're too complacent and they're willing to sacrifice, freedom and security for comfort. So
yeah, that's sad. It makes me cry a little bit. Drew, what about you? What do you think?
Yes and no, kind of like what Pavel was just describing. The thing that was interesting this time around, though, is that I think there's going to be 4 groups of people that come out of this EOL, and there's going to be those that are going to just screw it and stay on an unsupported Windows 10, which will probably be the majority of those people. And then there's going to be those that move to Windows 11, but only if their hardware will allow them to. And then there's the group that's going to purchase brand new hardware so that they can run Windows 11. But then there's going to be that group of switchers out there. And I think it's really cool that on the same day that Windows 10 went end of life, Zorin puts out their Zorin 18. And because of that, you had 100,000 people download Zorin on those first 2 days of it being released. Because we also have something that the Linux community has kind of pushed. It's that end of 10 team. And that's kind of a cool, I'm glad that we at least tried to gain a little bit of market share in that regard. But it is encouraging to see 100,000 downloads for Zorin 18 on that day, or those 2 days, I should say.
Yeah, I
agree.
Go ahead, Pavel. You got more to say?
I completely agree, and I also think of it as you think about smartphones. If someone has old Samsung phone with the Android 14 or 15, would they switch to Android? Would they buy a new phone to use Android 16, or would they buy an iPhone to use fresh iOS? It seems that for a lot of people, if the device do its thing, if it can take photos, if it can make calls, they don't have quite reasons to switch. A lot of people even don't update their smartphone operating system on a day one. So I think for a lot of people, the end of life of Windows 10 will mean nothing. Literally nothing, especially for those who are using pirated versions of Windows, because that's a lot of people in the third world countries. But at the same time, PC gamers, they are enthusiasts. If PC gamers go to the certain routine, everyone else will follow. So our goal as a Linux community to make Linux look cool, to make Linux a cool kid operating system, to make it so robust, so reliable, and so stable, so other people would be glad to use it.
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between mobile phones, because it's a good example, but on Windows 10, if you go out of service, it's not like you can continue on using it without knowing about Windows 11, because Microsoft is going to prod you over and over and over again to switch.
Yeah,
they're going to do pop-ups and ads and stuff. Android doesn't really do that. You just fall off into oblivion and stop being counted as a person. But for my answer to this question, I'm going to be much more optimistic than you guys, and I'm going to say yes. And not necessarily yes as in everyone's going to use Linux, but yes as in this time is different. And I think the reason why this time is different is because the influencer community, if you want to call that, is much more, at least it seems to me, much more behind Linux this time than ever before. So you got like PewDiePie, Jay's 2 Cents, Gamers Nexus has decided to start using Linux as part of their gaming benchmark stuff, and just tons and tons of moderately sized and big YouTubers coming out and saying, I'm switching to Linux. Now, some of them have failed and gone back to Windows, and that will tie into our topic a little bit later. But some of them have stuck around and are continuing to use Linux. And I saw someone who has about 500,000 subscribers who's not a traditional Linux YouTuber. They made a ricing video the other day. Like that actually happened. Wow. That's really cool. So I think that's what's different this time. Now, will it lead to an explosion of new users? No, I don't think that we're going to see 50% market share, but I could see a higher rise than normal than what we see, the half a percentage point per every 3 years like we have been seeing.
So. I'm glad you said that too, because it took 20 years for us to actually hit 1%, and then it took another 10 to hit 2%. But between 2 and 3, it took about, 2.5 years or thereabouts or something like that. So yeah, I think we're on that kind of rise. And I'd be curious to know what privacy is going to play a part in this. I know we kind of touched on privacy last week but you've got things like recall and Copilot integration and things like that. And maybe people are just going to go, damn, no way, man, that's garbage. And that would mean that they will be looking elsewhere. I'll be curious, Nate, what do you think about is Chrome OS stand to gain more than Windows? Than Linux rather?
I don't think so. I think Chrome OS is pretty much secured in where it's at. Mostly it's going to be places for schools and stuff like that, because I think if you're going to win anybody, and I know, Drew, you are not this person, but if you're going to win somebody, it's going to be gamers. Gamers will be the ones that you win, because when you can make it available, they can play their games and they don't have to rely on Windows. That takes half of the resources. They're not going to go to Chrome OS. They're going to come back to Linux because, Linux is, if it's a native translation, most of the time it is way faster. And sometimes Proton is way faster than the actual native port to Windows. So those will be the ones. And then, of course, you're going to have the ones that, how do I put this nicely? Take security too far. Does that make any sense? Well, I know we talked about this last time, and yeah, you can take your browser way too far as locking it and stuff. And I think you'll have those people that will come. And to my surprise, I have seen some macOS users come over because they're not liking the new AI stuff. So,
and I know a lot of them don't like what do they call it, the liquid glass stuff that came I mean, I know you don't
The
have to use
Tahoe.
it, but a lot of people are just really not liking Apple's design at the moment. So I think that it just feels, maybe it's because I don't really remember the Windows 7 end of life. I mean, it just kind of floated in, just felt like all the rest. But this one just feels a little bit different for me, and I'm not sure what that'll lead to. But I'm more optimistic, and I actually have a video plan saying
This optimism, Matt, is a little unnerving to me.
I know.
I'm sorry. And
I was getting to the pessimism here in a second. I have a video I have a video plan titled "Will Linux Ruin the Linux Desktop?" Because there's so many things I still, and this can lead into our main topic actually. There's so many things about Linux that still make it extraordinarily hard for people to come over here and use. You can't just go out and buy a laptop at Best Buy that runs Linux, and that means you have to have a transition, and that transition actually is what we're going to talk about tonight as our main topic. Now, when you make a segue through something, you're not supposed to mention the segue because it ruins the segue. But that segue was so good, I had to mention it. So our main topic for the night is the mindset needed to switch to Linux. And this was based off an article that you wrote, Pavel, about this exact thing. So I have a list of questions here that I'm going to ask everyone. We'll just kind of go around and give our opinions and everything. So the first thing that I have to ask everyone, we'll start with you, Pavel. What is the number one thing people need to keep in mind when they switch to Linux?
Well, a lot of people, when they switch to Linux, especially from Windows, they have this notion that Linux is quite a complex and difficult to learn operating system that big brain guys use. So it is not. Linux in many ways are way simpler, way more intuitive than Windows. You just have to spend a few, maybe weeks, maybe months learning it. When you were a kid, I bet that most people were learning Windows when they were kids, especially in our generation. So it took you maybe a couple of years from your early days in teenagehood to learn how to use Windows and how to use Windows optimally. So with Linux, you will be able to do that much, much faster. Trust me. So if you plan to dual boot in Linux with Windows, please don't. Please try as much as possible, keep Windows on a separate SSD to maximize the amount of time you're spending with Linux, and that will be the best decision you have. I think that's it. Oh, also one thing I want to add to the previous topic about the Windows end of life. I do really think that people don't really care about privacy in a sense that we have 800 million users using AI chatbots nowadays. But if you care about performance, if you care about your system being lightweight, Linux will provide you a way better solution than Windows. Trust me, you should try it.
Yeah, I think that the lack of interest in privacy is a sad but true type thing. So, Drew, what about you? What do you think the number one thing you should keep in mind if you're just switching to Linux?
Keeping an open mind. I think that is critical, because what you have is if it should work like Windows, right? And you're going to have that set of people that's going to go, where's the C drive? Wait, where's the C drive? And it's like, this is stupid, and Windows does this better. So you have to have an open mind. You have to actually embrace a learning curve. And that is a little hard for people to get that this is a little bit different. And so for them to just embrace the difference is everything, because you're going to, that first week they're going to go, this is confusing. I just don't understand. This is confusing to me. After a month, they're going to go, oh, I get it. That makes sense. And then after like a 3-month period, they're going to go, how did I ever stay on that other thing when this is so much better? So, they have to embrace the learning curve and not fight it.
All right, Nate, what about you? What do you think the number one thing people should keep in mind is when they switch to Linux?
That the file system is going to be completely different than what they're used to, because I know that is a big hurdle for a lot of people, in particular because they go to try to find their applications and it's in a different directory, and they don't know what a home directory is. They don't know what a etc directory is. They don't know what a var directory is. They don't know any of these things. And so I remember when I first started out in 2006, I feel old saying that, but when I first started out, I spent like several months trying to find exactly where all my programs are because I didn't know where it was located. And, now that I know where they're at, it's fine. But a lot of people, it is a big hurdle for sure for them to actually be able to use it. So learn your file system.
I think for me, the answer to this question comes down to you need to remember, I think one of you guys already said this, is that Windows and Linux aren't the same thing. Like, if you go into it thinking that it's going to work exactly the same, you're going to fail immediately. And I think that this is a downfall we have in a lot of desktop environments that make Linux look like Windows. By making it look like Windows, you're making people think that it is Windows, and that causes them to troubleshoot it like Windows. And it can't be troubleshooted like Windows. A lot of times the troubleshooting on Windows boils down to, it's broken, I'm going to nuke and pave. I mean, that's how I most often troubleshoot Windows, because I don't want to have to go in and edit a registry. I don't want to have to do whatever it is you have to do to fix half the things that go wrong on Windows, or install a new driver or any of that stuff. I don't want to do that. It's just much easier for me, at least, when I was using Windows, just to wipe it all, start over again. And on Linux, sure, you can do that, but chances are you're going to just have the same experience after the reinstall that you had before, because it's probably a system problem and not a distro problem. And it's one of the things that I had a big problem when I first switched to Linux, is that I thought that that's the best way to fix Linux problems, is just to switch to a different distro. That doesn't necessarily mean that your problem isn't going to be solved, because it may very well be, but there's also a really good chance that it's not, because it's a Linux problem. So my thing to keep in mind is that you have to be able to learn to troubleshoot. And I think that this is probably the thing that the Linux community does the worst in teaching people how to do, simply because there's too much. There's too many places to ask for help. There's too many varying levels of good and bad documentation out there, depending on what people are using. There's too many siloed places for support, places like Discord, places like GitHub. A lot of times people switching to Linux have never used GitHub, ever. And they don't know what GitHub's for. Maybe they don't have a GitHub account. And a lot of developers are very, shall we say, anal retentive about what gets put in their issues. That's not a place for support. It's a place for bug reporting. And they'll blatantly tell you that, and that turns a lot of people off, because then they're asking, like, where do I actually get my questions asked? And they'll point you towards IRC. And everybody's like, what the hell is IRC? If you ask a teenager off the street what IRC is, they're going to have no clue what it is. Even maybe a 20-year-old may not know what it is. IRC is an old, dead technology, except for people who are Linux nerds. So I think the support thing is a huge deal, and we'll talk more about that as we go on. So anything on that first question anybody wants to say before we move on to the next one?
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
The best thing about switching to Linux is that Linux can be many different things. So a lot of people want to try switching to Linux because they have something, they want to have something that looks closer to Windows, but Linux actually allows you can actually make Linux looks like any kind of Windows, like Windows XP, like Windows Millennium, like all sorts of old Windows that you can be nostalgic about. So Linux, to me, when I was switching to Linux myself from Windows, to me, Linux was not about the making my system looks exactly like Windows. To me, it was all about the freedom of customizability that I miss about old Windows. So if you really love Windows, if you really love PC gaming, if you really love PC building, Linux is the best option to provide you with customizability.
Definitely agree. Drew, you want to say something?
Well, no, I was, I just thought we were going to kind of stay on this topic a little bit, but that's fine. Let's just move on to some of your other questions. So,
yeah, so a lot of them are related, so we'll probably cover some of the stuff. So, with all that stuff in mind, one of the things that you brought up in your article, Pavel, is dual booting. So, my question for the panel, and we'll start with you, Pavel, is what's your opinion on people just having both on their computer, whether it's on a separate hard drive and they control the boot, or if they have another computer, or however they want to keep Windows around? What's your opinion on that?
Dual booting is completely fine. I was dual booting for the last, I think, 4 years. But the problem with dual booting is that when you face a problem on Linux, like let's say the game isn't working, the audio is crackling, like you can't, for example, edit your photos. The best thing you can do on Linux is to stay on Linux, is to reinvent your photo editing pipeline, let's say, or find a way to fix the game in order to play it. But what dual booting allows you to do is it allows you to skip the fixing Linux thing and go back to Windows. So every time you have both systems on your machine, you're it's easier for you. It's a path of least resistance to go back to Windows each time. So what people is ending up with dual booting is they never use Linux, almost never, only to try and mess with things, and they always go back to Windows. So if you plan to use Linux on the same SSD or on the same system as Windows, you can do that. I have no issues with that, but please keep in mind that if you want to switch to Linux, you have to use Linux more than Windows.
Nate, what about you? I know you use all the operating systems for your various monitors. Are you sorry? Are you in a pro dual booting kind of phase, or do you think that it's better to go to cold turkey?
I think it's better to me to go either. I don't think it's even better to go cold turkey. I think the best thing to do is if you're going to use Windows, still have your Windows machine, just leave it alone. And then personally, just get you a cheap laptop, or even if you want to play a game, there's plenty of used parts out there. Build you another little gaming system and put Linux on that and have it separate. And the only reason why I say that is even with dual booting, I've had multiple issues. Even with using different SSDs, I've had multiple issues. So to me, leave Windows where it's at and leave Linux where it's. Oh, and I just dropped all my water.
At least it had the lid on it. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
That could have been bad. If there was electrical fire behind him, we just know that
Yeah, if this dies, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, and you have to go out into the living room. Honey, I got to buy a whole bunch more monitors.
I actually bought 3 today.
Oh, goodness gracious. Nate, you have an issue, man. Before we get to you, Drew, I got a couple things to say. Linkarzu, I'm going to pronounce your name right one of these days. You've left a couple super chats. Thank you so very much. I missed the first one, but the second one says, let's show Matt some love with donations. Yes, please. I'll gladly take your money. But thank you so much for your super chat. Drew, what about you? Do you are you in the pro dual booting, or?
I think we have to recognize that there's only a specialized set of people that use computers that can actually pull off the dual booting. And so in order for that to work, you're going to have some technical ability. And we are that 10% that can pull it off. But 90% of the people out there can't. You know, they're just not going to be able to. But the other part is very true. That 90% will like use their computer till it's like, dude, this thing crawls. I cannot use this thing. It is so stinking slow. I can barely get my browser to load and blah, 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 blah. Try Linux. You know, that is your answer. You're not doing anything with that computer anyway at this point. You're going to have to buy another one because if you're going to, you know, because you have exhausted that particular computer's resources, it is bloated beyond belief. You're going to have to buy something new. Save yourself a few $100s and try Linux on this stupid machine that you're not going to be using anyway, it seems like. So I think there's no... To me, we are, like I said, that minority of people that can actually pull off the dual boot. And for the, you know, for the vast majority of people, just give it a shot. Just don't even bother. Just try it, and you have nothing to lose. You really don't.
So you mentioned the technical ability thing about dual booting, and that kind of made me change my answer, because my original answer was going to be like, if you're so attached to Windows, but you want to try Linux, virtual machines exist. But that also requires a lot of, at least some technical expertise in order to set up. I think maybe less than dual booting, but still some. But I would also argue that if you are going to switch to Linux, you're going to need some technical expertise. And that actually is one of my questions. Like, do you guys think that someone with zero technical experience can actually make the switch to Linux these days? Or are we just going to be stuck with a bunch of Linux nerds? Pavel?
I think yes. The reason why I'm saying yes is because I've installed Linux to my neighbors' machines, on my neighbors' machines. So I am a tech support guy in my neighborhood. So when somebody have problems with their laptops or something else, that they bring it to me, and I'm like, oh, hey, it seems here the old Windows 10 doesn't work good on your laptop. Maybe you should try using Linux. And people say yes, and so I install something user-friendly like Linux Mint or Pop! OS into them, and people are like, this works much better. So the people I help with laptops, they would never be able to install Windows or Linux by themselves. They have no idea what distro they're using, how to tweak things, how to update the system. But I teach them how to use the software manager that comes with Flatpak. I teach them how to update the system via the software update if it's in the system menus, and that's it, and they're good to go. And in many cases, Linux just works, especially on the relatively modern laptops with common Wi-Fi and network drivers. So yeah.
I think the key thing that you said there, though, Pavel, is that you installed it for them.
Yes, that's the main reason. Because for a lot of people, installing an operating system is a daunting task to do, even on Windows.
So I think your answer to the question would have to then be no. Don't you agree that?
Because I agree with you.
If you can't install it, then you can't actually. I mean, like if I gave my mom a USB disk with Ubuntu on it, she'd have no clue what to do with it. She wouldn't even know what port to plug it in. I mean,
well, if the question is would they be able to install it, I think the answer is no. But would they will be able to comprehend the idea of the different operating system and learn a new path and learn how to make things in a different way on a different system? Yes, my answer is 100% yes.
Okay, Nate, what about you? Do you think someone who's non-technical can use Linux?
I think so, and I'll tell you a good example why. It's what we're doing exactly right now, which is broadcasting through the waves of the internet. YouTube exists. There's a reason why I call it YouTube University, because there's quite a few times me and YouTube quite get along, and there's a few times where somebody makes a video and says, if you have this cable, then you unplug it. Don't unplug it. Then you plug it back in. If you unplugged it, don't plug it back in. I give up. Anyways, but yeah, there's plenty of tutorials out there that explain how to do it. And if somebody's really determined to do it, or as, I don't know, is it Pavel?
That's okay. That's okay. You can call me Paul, by the way.
Okay. I'll try Pavel. I think I might get that.
He's from Oklahoma. It's okay.
Yeah. Like I said, I'm a Southerner. Me and words, it's optional. Anyways, so like Pavel here, I'm also the IT guy in the area. So when people want to get away from Windows, they're like, hey, I've heard about Linux. See, and that's the thing. Even out in the middle of nowhere where there's just mostly cows, they've heard about Linux. So I'm just saying.
Wait a minute. The cows have heard about Linux? Sorry. It's 10 o'clock at night. My sense of humor has gone appropriately there. So, all right. Drew, what about you? I'm
think 50-50 on this, because if you asked me this question 5 years ago, Matt, and with knowing how the installers have improved over the last 5 years, I would say, if this was 5 years ago, I'd say, yeah, you're right. But I think that in the install process has gotten much, much cleaner, better, more beginner oriented, I suppose. Are you laughing at me?
I'm going to prove you wrong, actually, is what I'm going to do.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
But, okay, let me finishing up. I will say this. Once it is installed, users, let's say 90% of the people out there will only use about 10% of the features of an operating system. Okay? So that 10% Linux covers. Without question. Linux covers that 10%.
100%, I agree.
Okay. I'm going to do a quick poll of you guys and the chat. How do you enter your boot menu? Just off the top of your head, if you know. How do you enter your boot menu on your computer? What key?
Oh, delete. Or F12.
F12 for most.
Delete.
Okay.
F12 or delete,
so I got,
yes.
Delete, F12.
F11.
Someone's going to say F11. Someone's going to say F2. That is your problem right there. In order to get into your boot menu, you have to know what key it is. And you cannot tell me that someone can go online and find out what that key is. Now, oftentimes the computer will tell you, it will, but it's in the smallest text in the lower right or left-hand corner. And you have to know that it's there to look. So
I'm going to rebuttal this because I used to not know how to do the boot, Tom, and I learned from Googling on the internet. And I was like, Dell laptop boot key, and it was like F12. And so I'm like, okay. Now I've done it so many times now that I know if it's a stinking HP, then I know which one it is.
I think my problem is that I have a much lower opinion on people's ability to Google than you have.
Think everybody's dumb?
Yes. Yeah.
I think.
Go ahead, Pavel.
I'm sorry. I think it goes from the character of each person character, because when I was a kid, my father taught me how to install Windows Millennium. And so when he taught me how to enter the boot menu, he said, I don't know which key it is. You just have to smash F11, F12, delete. And I was like a little kid. I was like chattering all the buttons. It was so fun to me that I was able to enter the boot menu, that I saw the BIOS. BIOS was so scary thing to me with a 5-year-old kid. So in my opinion, if a person is kind of enthusiastic about trying new stuff, if he's a tinkerer at mind, he would smash all the buttons without even knowing what button is. So I think it goes from the people's mind. If they really want to try Linux, they will find many ways to install it. Even ask someone in the neighborhood.
Yeah, I don't know that maybe. So some people, yes. I think that there are levels to the experience that kind of will put points towards the prediction of whether or not a Linux user is going to make it as a full-time Linux user. And that very first test is whether or not they can get into the boot menu. If you can get that far, you're going to get a lot farther than the vast majority of people, because I think that's the first hurdle. Because Drew, you're right. The install process has gotten way better, unless you use Debian, of course. I'm sorry. Yeah, that's basically stay the same. But all the other distros have made a very interesting choice of making the installer as simple as possible. And Arch-based distros kind of don't do that. They make it as more complicated, but that's beside the point. It's more like an Arch thing. But for like Fedora, Pop! OS, OpenSUSE, Fedora, all of them have made a concerted effort to make it as simple as possible to install Linux. It's that boot menu thing that is the first hurdle, and then after that it becomes more about applications. So that kind of leads me to my next question. Do you guys think that the application software hurdle is something that can be overcome easily enough? Because there's certain obviously certain things that are just never going to be here. Adobe's never going to come here. CAD's always going to be pretty bad here on Linux. A lot of music production stuff always going to be Windows and Mac only, stuff like that. So do you guys think that there's something new Linux users can do to overcome that hurdle, which is probably the biggest one? Pavel, go ahead.
I think never say never. Probably one day, Adobe will think about entering into Linux world. But to me, the best answer is that Linux it can't compete with Windows in terms of software compatibility. But what you can do is switch into Linux. You can learn new stuff. You can learn free and open source photo editors. You can learn video editors, including like Kdenlive, Live, DaVinci Resolve. DaVinci is not open source, but it's still available on Linux. You can install many things, and you can rewire your brain in a way that it will help you to overcome all your creative challenges. When if you will build your creative pathway around the free and open source software, you will get into a place where you don't pay a dime for a software except the donations. You can use whatever you want on your system, and it's free, and it's designed for you to overcome your creative goals. And I think that's a quite healthy place to be.
Yeah, I'm not sure I agree with you on the Adobe thing. I'm with what I said to begin with, that it's never going to happen. But it's also possible that it goes web app eventually, and then that will I get proven wrong. That's what
Think about video games. There are now 20,000 games or 15,000 games on Steam that are Steam Deck compatible or playable. Yeah, but that's 15,000 games. 5 years ago, there were only a few hundreds of games compatible with Linux.
Right, but Steam has a very pro Linux,
yes,
mentality.
So
Adobe does not. And
I
I mean,
agree.
maybe eventually they will, but I just don't see it happening. And I know that when we say, well, Adobe is like the biggest thing that's not going to come to Linux, and people are like, well, I mean, who actually uses Adobe products? It's still a very big market. And if you were to ask your audience, like if you had a reasonable size audience, why can't you switch to Linux? They're either going to say one of two things. They're going to say gaming. They're going to say Adobe. Those are the two things.
Photoshop, yeah.
You get a lot of music stuff there as well, but those are the two big ones. And I think that the biggest hurdle for a lot of people.
I mean, Outlook too.
Yeah,
I mean,
Microsoft Office. Yeah. There's a lot of reasons not to switch to Linux. Just use Windows. So what about you, Nate? Do you think that people can overcome the software hurdle if they put enough effort into it?
If they're willing to put in the effort, yes, because there are alternatives to multiple different things. Even in the Adobe suite, there's multiple alternatives that you can use. Some are free and some are paid. But in the same sense, I'm kind of like, for example, GIMP. I like the idea of GIMP, but please quit crashing. Just because I have 10 layers doesn't mean that you should crash and forget about all of them. Anyways, so yeah, that's kind of the hurdle that it can come, is if you're trying to learn a new application and then it constantly crashes. There's a reason why we both use DaVinci Resolve, Matt, because KDE decided to completely crap itself more than once. And how many times have we lost the podcast because of that? And I had to re-edit the whole entire stinking thing.
More than many times.
So, yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
So, yeah. It can be overcome, and you can use free or false software, free and open source. There are some paid software that you can get. There's ways to get other paid software through, GitHub or GitLab, depending on where they host it at. Software is a 50-50 for me because they really have to be willing to try it.
Yeah, and they have to be willing to change. They have to be very... Drew, your point earlier, your first point was keeping an open mind. You have to be able to do that about the software that you're using. It's more than just Linux. You have to be able to realize that GIMP is not Photoshop. But if you put in some effort, it can do a lot of the things that Photoshop can do. Unless you need to use a shape tool, in which case there's no goddamn shape tool. Sorry. Got a little bit saucy there, but it's so stupid that the shape. Sorry, it's your fault, Nate. You brought up GIMP, so I need to do this. But how is it that you get to version 3 and you've been around for over 20 years, maybe even longer, and you still haven't created a shape tool? How hard? I'm not a developer. I could code the damn shape tool. I probably couldn't, but that's not saying it's hard. It's just I can't code worth a damn. It's just I don't know. It's just so stupid. Sorry, end of rant. I got a little bit distracted there. So, Drew, what about
you? And we're on GIMP 3.
Yeah, maybe by version 5 they'll have it in there. They won't.
I think you're actually right, Matt, in the term. But because part of what you said was 100% bang on. But if you ask somebody, it's like, and they'll say, "I need Photoshop." Do you? Do you really? Because I think that your level of usage can be easily covered by what GIMP is doing. Okay. But again, if you're talking about creators, then maybe they need these specialized tools. But there is that group of people that obviously it's like, I have to have Photoshop to get my thumbnail. No, you don't. No, you don't. You can use GIMP and you would be absolutely fine. Or you could be like me and cheat completely and have AI actually build the thumbnail for you. You know what I'm saying? But the thing that's interesting that Nate was saying, though, is like choice is a feature, not a bug. Okay? Choice requires effort. But that effort will buy you control. And if you want to have control over your desktop environment and your experience as a computer user, it's gonna, that choice will provide you that control.
Okay.
I want to add too.
Go ahead.
Sorry, I just want to add real quick. If you say that you really need Photoshop, there is like Photopea that is free and it's on the web. There's multiple things like that. If GIMP keeps crashing and bugging out like it has me, so I go to online stuff.
I think that, like Drew said, it really does depends on what. Like there are certain people. Video editing is actually the easiest one to transition from Windows to or Mac to Linux because Resolve exists. You just have to be willing. A lot of people are very attached to their video editor. Like if you're well, Apple's one, the Final Cut. So if you're a Final Cut guy, you're very attached to Final Cut. If you're using DaVinci Resolve, you're very attached to that. And it's very hard. It's not that you can't switch. It's just that you don't want to because you have all these key bindings. You have all these ways of doing things that just fit into workflow. Because when you're editing a video, I mean, we edit videos, but we're not high production movie studios. We're just making YouTube videos for, relatively small audiences. But if you are, the bigger you are in terms of, more complexity, the more chances are you're attached to your workflow. And that's kind of the same with Photoshop and stuff. The problem with Photoshop and like Audition and all the other Adobe stuff is that there's not good alternatives like there is for video editing. And for me, I always come back. Gaming for me doesn't really matter because you make the choice to play the games you want to play, and if you've made the choice to play a game that doesn't work on Linux, and that's just a you problem, right? And gaming is a pleasure thing. It's for leisure. When you make money creating things, that's a legitimate reason not to switch because you can't. You have to have whatever it is that Photoshop offers you, and you can't switch. Like GIMP just doesn't do it. Maybe you've tried and you've put in effort and you've done everything that we've said to do tonight. Like you keep an open mind and put in the effort, and you've installed Linux and you've tried and all this stuff, or even you've installed GIMP on Windows and tried it that way, and you just can't. That's a legitimate reason not to switch. And I think that the biggest issue for that segment, no matter how big or small it actually is that it's not going to change, right? Like if you have those specific reasons, it's not going to change. Gaming has changed, as you said, Pavel. It's gotten all these games, and you can play 20 or 50,000 games on Linux, and there's only a very few like online multiplayers that you can't play because of anti-cheat, right?
True.
That stuff has changed, but the creativity stuff, I mean, it's been 32, 33, 34 years. It's not going to change unless for whatever reason we were all varying shades of wrong earlier in the mini topic, and this is the year of the Linux desktop, and all of a sudden at the end of the year there's 50% market share because Windows just completely crashed. It's not going to happen. But if it did, that's literally having 50% market share. That's what would drive Adobe to say, hey, oh my goodness, there's a billion people using Linux. That would bring them here. But I just don't, maybe I'm just
even 10%, man. I mean, even 10% would do it. I think my personal opinion is you got to understand too. It's like we've gone through this topic a little bit, but we have to acknowledge the fact that Linux is not for everybody. It's just not. People who need specific Windows-only software, like Matt was just talking about Adobe and CAD and things like that, not for Linux. Not for Linux. People who want a zero learning curve, they're not going to be a good Linux user, and they're going to fail. Competitive gamers with anti-cheat. Matt just talked about that, and then people who blame the tool that they're using instead of like actually learning it. And anybody that wants like a one-to-one kind of Linux replacement. Windows replacement rather. That's just not going to happen. But if you are in the other camp and you're like, who's ready? It's like anyone that's willing to learn or values privacy or control or is comfortable with like web-based tools. Those guys, that's like easy. Those are easy converts, really.
So we have people saying that they're guaranteeing that Adobe will be coming into Linux eventually.
Well, so I was going to say, Drew, you're actually right. I do think it's 10% because if you remember, that's when Adobe really took interest in Apple, was when they hit 10%.
Maybe I'm wrong about this, but wasn't Photoshop invented on Macintosh?
I thought so.
But their full suite was actually on Windows for a long time because they had 90-something% market share. But when Mac started rising because they changed to the Intel and Mac just went that way.
Apple
also-
Apple does weird things with their silicon too. Like they switch, right? Windows has been Intel only basically forever. But Apple was PowerPC and nobody wanted to support that. And then they went to Intel and then all of a sudden it was much easier to support. And now they're on, ARM. But they're popular enough that they made the transition, right? And everyone kind of sees that ARM as the future. Pavel, you were going to say something. Go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to reframe the idea that Adobe will see at the 10% or 50% of the market share and will say, oh, there's a billion people using Linux. No. It won't happen like that. But Adobe will say, Adobe will look at the market share and they will realize that, oh, there's a billion people who don't use Adobe software. The reason why Microsoft is about to create its handheld Xbox, not because there is a Linux market share that's going on, but because there is a market share that there is a hundreds, if not millions of people that use Steam Deck every day, meaning that they don't pay to Microsoft to play on the Steam Deck. So I think what will make Adobe make their tools available on Linux is not the fact that there are a lot of people on Linux, is that the fact that these people are paying for something else. The more people are paying for the DaVinci Resolve on Linux, there is a more market incentive for Adobe to release Adobe Premiere on Linux.
I think that I think you're probably right in terms of like video editing, but for everything else, there's nothing else you can pay for, right?
Now.
I'm actually wrong about that because there's like Affinity Photo. You can do that for photo editing, right? There's that. There are alternatives to audio editing and Photoshop and all of that stuff. They're just so obnoxiously less, used than the Adobe stuff. You don't hear about.
I think Affinity has no Linux support either.
No, they don't. And I
would be happy to use it on Linux.
But you can get it on there pretty easy. Almost just like with Resolve, you have to kind of do a little hoop around on your distro, but you can get it installed unless you're Matt.
Shut up. It's too late for your nonsense. All right.
Anyways, but I was going to say, I think also maybe Flatpaks might be the big game changer because that is a universal application.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I was going to say Drew's going to be left behind. Well, I think that was the hope for Flatpaks, Nate. I just don't know that it has been realized. I think that
they just need to get their auditing system together. So really,
if they auditing and if they'd get their permission systems actually working properly, that's one area where Snaps just does it way better. But nobody uses Snaps unless you use Ubuntu. So, all right. So I have one last question for you guys, and it's the nerdiest question of the night. What do you think that there's a stereotype that goes around that if you're going, and you guys have seen the YouTube videos, how a Linux user installs a browser, and this person sitting in front of all of Nate's monitors, all of them with terminals open, just text flying, right? That's exactly the Bruce Almighty thing. Everyone has that image of Linux in their head when they think about Linux, if they don't know better. So what do you guys think that the best way to get that stereotype out of the zeitgeist is? Because there's the thing is, like, if you're going to use Linux, you're going to be in front of a command line all the time fixing problems. And we all know that it's not true, but the vast majority of people don't know. So what can we do as a collective to remove that stereotype from the thing? Pavel, go ahead.
But should we? To be honest, I don't think that that's a bad stereotype, because when people see a hockey man clacking on the keyboard, it feels like they're doing something really challenging. When you use Linux is not challenging for us, but for people who learn it, there is an obstacle to overcome. So I think when people think about Linux as something that requires you to understand the terminal and the command lines, it's actually a really cool stereotype, no?
It also prevents a whole bunch of people from ever trying, don't you think? And maybe
yes,
that's a good thing? You think?
I think it's the Windows conditioning. That's like, if they say, if I see a command line, something is bad. Something bad is happening, right? Something's broken. I think that's what at least the initial viewpoint is for people that see the terminal. That is where I think we have to, like, that mindset. We have to say, this is a tool, not a punishment.
Yes. there were a lot of there were a wave of posts on Reddit when people got their Steam Deck for the first time, and they were trying to install emulators and other stuff. There were posts when people saying, "I feel like a hacker when using Steam Deck because it requires me to use terminal." It was a pro, not a con.
Nate, what about you? Do you think that there's... I didn't really phrase it as it being a good or bad thing. I was asking how to get past it, but it's a good way of looking at it. But Nate, do you think that there's a way to get past the stereotype, or should we get past the stereotype of being a command line centric operating system?
I'm going to give you a yes and no answer.
I love you guys with these yes or no answers. It's almost like getting both. 2 for the price of 1. Go ahead.
Well, so I think people on Linux need to teach exactly the terminal as well, because that is the ultimate tool on Linux. You can do anything in the terminal, and that's how we get most of our stuff to work. But nowadays, because of distros really actually working on the desktop side, I also think that you should show, as creators, we should also show how to do it with the GUI. Instead of just, a CLI or just TUI, like show both of them. Hey, this is how you do it in the terminal. This is how you do it in, this command line. This is how you do it in the graphical environment. Do all of them. And, if you do that, I feel like for the people that are afraid of terminals, you can go ahead and they're like, oh, well, this has a graphical environment. I can use this tool. I can do that because, Windows. That everything's got to be a graphical environment. Or people like, oh, this looks a little bit easier in the terminal. We talk about Linux's choice. Give them the choice.
I agree.
I think that that's a good point. My worry is that the vast majority of support comes from 12-year-old Ubuntu articles on the internet. And every single one of them is sudo apt install or whatever. And unfortunately, as much as we would want to change the way we do documentation, all that stuff isn't going away because the internet never dies. And Google likes to source those things because that's where the vast majority of people go. So those are the most popular links, and that's where people go. So what about you, Drew? Do you think that this stereotype can be removed, or should it be removed?
It's tough. It's tough because it's tough for me to say, yeah, it should be removed. When I freaking use the terminal all the time, the power in your hands when you have a terminal at your, when you can do so much in the terminal and have it be so responsive and so fast and so clean, it's hard to fight against that. But I have looked in the chat and I'm just like, okay, put old people in front of the terminal and see what they do or something. I'm kind of paraphrasing here. I'm freaking old. Okay. I'm just letting you know. I remember when it was DOS 2.1 and everything was in the command line. Okay. DOS 2.1. And yes, we had Windows 3 and then, or 2.1 and then Windows 3.11 and so on. I remember all that because I'm freaking old and I used the command line back then even, okay? So yes, don't you ageist SOBs out there. You know what I'm saying?
Okay. So there's sorry, just before you go, Nate, there's 2 things about that whole thing that you just did, Drew. First off, you are old. Second of all, when it was just Tyler and I got emails from people because they called us. We did a topic similar to this one where basically we said that old people are. We didn't put it nicely. Let's just say we basically said they had the inability to learn new tricks. Shall we say that? And I got emails, not more than 5, about how rude we were to old people. And then I had to message them back because everyone, for whatever reason, sees this face and thinks I'm 19 years old. I don't get that. I was born in 1985. Okay, I too remember DOS. Okay. It was MS-DOS, but still, I remember it. Anyway, so Nate, you wanted to say something. Go ahead.
I was just going to say this rant brought to you by Butternotes.
No.
Son of a bitch. Son of a bitch.
Yeah.
That guy.
It could have... Okay. I think now that
Talking about nerdy.
now that we've trolled Drew for the night, it's time for us to move on.
If we have a couple of minutes more, I want to say that Drew, by the way, edits his videos in the terminal.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
Why am
so
I
he's
wearing
not
this
that
hat?
old.
This hat needs to go to Drew. That is that.
And I'm
I'll
not
send you
trolling.
my address and you can.
Oh, wait. I'm going to pull up a bash script. Hold on.
There we go. There we
There we
go.
go.
Whoa.
Hat.
Just-
It's a mid-podcast hat change for those of you who have it on the bingo. Actually, somebody did make it. I think it was Traffiton made us a bingo card. I should distribute that to people. There's actually a Linux Cast bingo card. All right, we are running a little bit on time, so we're going to move on to the Nuggies of the week. This is our end cap section where we showcase apps or tricks or tips or whatever you want to call them to you guys, basically things that we are interested in that we'd like to share. So Drew, you get to go first. What is your...
man, I am a little bit unprepared. Okay, so I'll tell a little story then based on the fact that since this is a kind of a Windows podcast and we talked about end of life with Windows 10, my wife is using Windows 10 on the PC that she uses for work. And she works for the company that I work for. And one of the things that I wanted to do was to get her on Linux. Not going to happen. Quicken and other things that we kind of like didn't talk about and stuff like that. So I actually installed a Windows 11 LTSC on another computer. And it has no Cortana, no Microsoft Store apps, no Xbox stuff, no bloatware, no Copilot AI nagging. And basically it's like clean, and the only thing it does is 5 to 10 years of security or support, and that's about it. Anyway, if I hate to say that is my Nuggie of the week. It's just a story. Take it for what it is.
There has to be some kind of penalty or some kind of penance.
I think I'll have to be like banned from the next pod, man.
Like there has to be something. If someone uses Windows as a Nuggie, there should be like you have to go say 5 Hail Marys or something. I mean,
fair enough.
There's something that has to go on there. Nate, your Nuggie of the week, please.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a gaming side. I have realized that because I've always wanted a Nintendo Switch. I didn't want the new Switch 2 because I'm not signing my life away. So with that being said, I just kind of went on Marketplace and I've just realized there's a ton of OG Nintendo Switches that you can get for less than $100. And this one came in a fancy little Super Mario bag, and the Switch works and everything. And it came with all the accessories, it came with the box and one game. So I'm just telling you, if you want some consoles, go check out the Marketplace, check out online. There's a lot of free places that you can look, and make sure you meet them in public, not at their house. Just clarifying that. I met this guy at Walmart, so keep that in mind.
That's much.
No, but I live in Oklahoma. We won't go there, but you know exactly what I had with me. Anyways, but yeah, so I got a Nintendo Switch. It's the OG model. It's not the OLED, but at the same time, it was less than $100, and I'm just saying,
nice.
Utilize it to your and PC stuff. Just saying, the Marketplace is still there.
Yeah.
So
Cool.
All right, Pavel, your Nuggie of the week, please.
Yeah, my Nuggie of the week is Krita. We've been talking about GIMP a lot on this podcast, and it seems that everybody hates GIMP because GIMP isn't stable. GIMP lacks a lot of useful features like aligning layers and shape tools and a lot of other stuff. But there is also other image editing software called Krita. It is designed with the drawing first and the photo editing second, but it is still way more powerful. It has a lot of tools. And it can allow you to edit photos and make thumbnails. So check it out.
That's actually a really good one. I don't think I've ever actually used Krita before. I've just always used GIMP.
Give it a try. It has a weird text layer editor tool, but otherwise it's cool. It's really cool.
Is there a Flatpak? Do you know?
I'm not sure. I think I've installed it via Pacman.
Okay. The reason why I asked is because I don't want...
there's a flat pack.
Cool. Because that way I don't have to download the entire KDE stack in order to get it, which is the reason why I've gotten rid of Crusader.
True.
All right. So my Nuggie of the week is actually... I know that Nate's usually the hardware guy, and he met that tonight, but I have a pen. And I know that this is about the least exciting Nuggie of the week ever, but this is the Dr. Grip pen. Now, my hands are a bit big. I have a big man hand, and the little pens just are the least comfortable things. Like I have this, standard pen that everybody has, and this thing hurts to write with. Like it hurts me, like physically. And what I need is a big, beefy pen. And this Dr. Grip by Pilot, it's like $7. It's not like super expensive. I know there's like a pen culture in the world right now where you can go spend like $150 on a pen. I don't want to get into that, but this one here is very, very comfortable. And my handwriting has been bad my entire life, and my handwriting is still bad, but this makes it readable for whatever reason. So if you're like me and you have a big hand, Dr. Grip from Pilot, I highly recommend it. So that is the Linux Cast for this week, guys. So, Pavel, thank you so very much for joining us. We had an excellent
Thank you for inviting me.
Pavel is on YouTube. He is Reluctant Anarchist. It's Reluctant Anarchist, not the Reluctant Anarchist, right? So there's
Yes.
Okay, cool. So go check him out on YouTube. The link will be in the video description or in the podcast description if you're listening to the audio version. Go subscribe to his channel. He does primarily YouTube short content. But the first video I saw of his was the Unix porn video. Maybe your very first video. I'm not sure if that was your first video.
Yes, it is.
If you guys ever want to see someone go viral in the Linux community, that video did it. like everyone did like a response video to that video. Like it was great. So go check out Reluctant Anarchist on YouTube. Give him a subscribe. Are you on like Mastodon or any of the other platforms? Or are you just?
I have a Telegram channel. I also have a Telegram channel with the same name, Reluctant Anarchist. So if you're on Telegram, please subscribe.
The Linux Cast also have a Telegram channel. I'm the only one on it.
Whoa.
Matt's the only one on mine as well. So
yeah. I went to his Matrix channel and just trolled the shit. What more did you expect? I mean, really. Nate is
first guy banned.
Yeah. I know that was a great. That was a great gag. Nate is Nate Picks Tech World on YouTube. He made a video this week. I mean, just seriously, it was a channel update video, but still, he remembered his password, so that means that there are videos to come. So Nate Picks Tech World on YouTube, go check him out as well. Drew is now a streamer. Like he's the oldest guy, the oldest gentleman on the podcast, and yet he's like the hippest of them all. he's a streamer, and before we know it, he's gonna be on Twitch getting bits and all of these things, whatever those are.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
I don't know. He's just the guy Linux on YouTube. Go check him out. He does videos on Debian and scripting and home lab stuff and all sorts of awesome stuff. So if you're into the Linux nerd stuff and you are interested in Debian, go check his channel out as well, Just the Guy Linux. And of course, I am the Linux Cast, and this is my channel. If you haven't hit the subscribe button, please do so. I do see that I have another super chat. Tony says, sudo pacman-s pen. Error, target not found pen. That's good. Thanks for the super chat. All right, so if you want to get in contact with us, the best way to do so is via email. email@thelinuxcast.org is that email address. You can email that, and I'll forward it on to any of the guys if you need to point it towards someone. And the rest of the contact information is over on the website, thelinuxcast.org/contact. There you'll find the Matrix and the Discord and the email address and the Mastodon for everybody. All that stuff. Check it out. thelinuxcast.org is where you'll find that, along with blog posts and all of the previous episodes all the way back to season 1, except for those first 4 episodes, which will go down in infamy as never actually around. Like, I have them. I've listened to them. They're horrible. Nobody wants to see them, so I'm not posting them. So maybe I'll do like you guys remember back in the day when Disney would take one of their old releases out and put it in the vault? And then 5 years later, they'd bring out a special edition that cost like $100 and it was out of the vault again. Maybe I'll do that for those first 4 episodes. They'll be in the vault and out of the vault, but you only get them if you give me $100. Those are going to be well sold. I'm just going to tell you that. Anyways, that is it for this one. Thank you guys for joining us live. We record this live every Tuesday, usually at 8 o'clock p.m. Eastern time, so join us then. If not, you can catch the recorded version on Saturday. So we'll see you guys next time. Peace out.